What is up, everybody? My name is Jericholic8704, and I am back here again with another Raw review. This time we're doing Raw, June 23rd, 2003, live from New York City in Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena, and if you couldn't tell from watching this show, it is the home of WrestleMania 20. I mean, guys, they smash that over your head 24/7. Every single sentence, every single segment had some mention of the fact that Madison Square Garden was the home of WrestleMania 20. So let's just dive right in. First off, we had our opening match, Scott Steiner with Stacy Keibler, of course, and Booker T versus Test and Christian. Booker T and Christian start off. Booker starts strong, but gets cut off. Test and Christian get the heat on Booker. Booker counters the pump handle slam, tags in Steiner. Steiner hits some suplexes and a scorpion death drop of all moves. I found that interesting because I find it funny how, and this happens all the time in wrestling. This isn't like a nitpick or anything, or I'm not even complaining in the slightest. It's just, an observation. And it's one of the rules of wrestling where, if a certain someone does a certain move, it is devastating. But, if another person does the same move, it doesn't have the same effect. Like, for example, if Sting were to do the reverse DDT, it's, earth-shattering because it's the Scorpion Death Drop. But Scott Steiner did the exact same move, but it's just a reverse DDT that, can set up a near fall, or it's just, a move for him to do. Same thing with the super kick. When Shawn Michaels hits the super kick, oh my God, game over. Match is over. 1, 2, 3. He gets the win. But the Young Bucks and the Usos, they throw out super kicks. Candy. They super kick constantly, and it's just for a near fall. It's not even their finisher or anything. So it's just stuff like that I always find funny. But yeah, I noticed it here. When I saw him do it, I was like, oh my God, I just did a Scorpion Death Drop, and he didn't even go for the cover. So Tess tries to grab Stacy. Steiner breaks it up and gets knocked into Stacy, who hurts her ankle on her fall down from the apron. Christian tries to hit a belt shot on Steiner, but misses. Booker T gets a big heel kick on Christian, but he throws Steiner out, and then Tess gets a big boot for a pinfall. We get half of a star here. The match wasn't all that good. It lasted 2 seconds. Wasn't a long match at all. And this was our first of 4 tag team matches for this Raw, so we were in for a long ride. Then we had a backstage segment with Kane. Kane, as we know, is challenging for the World Heavyweight Championship tonight, where if he loses, he has to unmask. Kane is staring into a mirror, and he just doesn't move. He's just literally staring, and it's almost like they made a wax version of Kane, and he was just staring right in front of the mirror. But he wasn't moving at all, so that was really weird. And then all of a sudden, they played a clip of his debut at Bad Blood 97, but it wasn't like when WWE will do a highlight package all throughout Raw. It's here's a special look at before they go to a commercial break, or when they come back from a commercial break. It's a video of the best moments of Kane, and it shows all of his career highlights. What happened was the camera just zoomed right in on Kane's face to an uncomfortable degree, and then that little ripple effect that's used in TV to signify a memory happened. Like the screen kind of went a little fuzzy and white, and there was a ripple effect, and Kane's face slowly disintegrated into the Bad Blood 1997 replay. What this whole segment was telling the audience was we are able to get inside the mind of Kane, and Kane is currently thinking about his debut. If they wanted to show some sort of retrospective of Kane's career, couldn't they have just done it in highlight packages before and after commercial breaks? I don't know. Then we had a WWE.com poll, these again. Who will win, Kane or Triple H? Simple as that. Then we had Chris Nowinski with Teddy Long versus Maven. Teddy Long mentions the injustice towards Nowinski. Long says Nowinski did not win tough enough because he is smart. Long says Maven is going to learn what color he is because light-skinned brothers are out of style. JR refers to Nowinski as a kid of privilege. I thought that was a great line because several times when I've been watching these Raws, JR has said a line that has carried a lot of weight in the year 2016. And Nowinski, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, blonde, white kid that went to Harvard, that probably grew up in New England, is full of privilege. That has a lot of weight in 2016. Maven gets a roll-up for the win at literally the 1 minute mark. JR thinks it's a near fall, but the bell sounds, which was really weird. He rolled him up, and he counted 3, and then JR's well, he got a 2 count there, and then all of a sudden the bell rings, and then JR flips the shit oh my God, Maven got him. So it was a really weird finish. I'll give it a dud because nothing happened, and it was just a waste of our time. Then we had a backstage segment with Evolution's Arrival. They came out of a limo. Ric Flair, Orton, and Triple H are all arriving in style. They all have their nice clothes on. Some girls show up and pretend to care. whatever. Then we have Jericho's highlight reel. Jericho makes fun of New Yorkers. He makes fun of the accent. Jericho says Stone Cold does not tell it like it is. Y2J shows Austin calling Lance Storm boring in his match last week. Jericho introduces Lance Storm as his guest. King says having Storm on Jericho's highlight reel is bad for ratings. So to counteract Stone Cold Steve Austin's accusation of saying he is boring, Lance Storm then reads his promo off of a piece of paper. Like he brought like an index card to the ring, grabbed the mic, and just read right from the index card. I mean, I know obviously this is all on purpose. Like it's supposed to be bad because like Lance Storm's gimmick is that he sucks. But again, so it was ridiculous. So Jericho says he has the audience in the palm of his hand. So Jericho was constantly interjecting throughout Storm's completely cardboard promo. So Storm says his ability should be able to entertain people, and if they want bells and whistles, they should see the circus. And then Jericho was like, yeah! Storm asks if everyone could please stop calling him boring. Some dudes come in and take apart Jericho's set, and Jericho starts freaking out. Austin comes on the Tron and says they are both boring in the ring. Jericho says Austin is bitter because he is the first undisputed champion. Austin says if there's one thing you can't stand more than a bore, it's a bitch. That was a great line. And he said he was going to make a tag match with people who know how to move furniture, just like those goons that came in and tore apart Jericho's set. So we had the Dudley Boyz versus Lance Storm and Chris Jericho. The Dudley start strong, but Jericho trips Bubba from the outside. Storm and Jericho get the heat. The crowd chants boring whenever Lance Storm gets in the ring. That's kind of like the new gimmick. Bubba gets the hot tag to Devon. Devon gets a comeback going. The Dudleys hit a double flapjack on Jericho. That was actually a great spot because Devon whipped Jericho into the corner, and Bubba kind of came in the same area of Devon, and the crowd called for a 3D, but they got a double flapjack, which I thought was kind of funny. The Dudleys hit a was-up spot on Lance Storm. He tells Devon to get the tables. Jericho drop kicks Bubba out of the ring. Storm hits a springboard clothesline, but he accidentally knocks Jericho out of the ring. Then the Dudleys hit a 3D on Lance Storm for the win. This is your average Raw tag team match. We've seen this type of tag team match on Raw every single week. 2 stars, nothing wrong with it, nothing good about it. It was just there. Then we had a clip of Evolution ripping off Kane's mask 5 months ago, just kind of set in the fact that like Kane's mask means the world to him. And I'm going to talk more about Kane's mask when we get to the main event, because really the main event is the only noteworthy thing about this show. Everything else is kind of boring. But yeah, like they didn't show this as some sort of like Kane ripple effect memory. They showed it as like a video that JR and King want to show the audience. So why all the other videos like this couldn't be in this sort of, presented in this sort of format, I don't know. Then we had a backstage segment with Evolution. Orton is reading Tatum Brown, which is Mick Foley's book. Orton reads a passage from the book, and it was about like a man being in love with a woman and having him in her arms, and a woman's breast is mentioned, and Flair's only comment is, Foley has never felt a woman's breast in his entire life. Flair says they need to win their tag team match tonight. Yes, we have another tag team match on the horizon, and that Triple H needs to exit Madison Square Garden as the World Heavyweight Champion. Then we had another fucking tag team match. We had La Resistance come out. They sing the French national anthem, and obviously both guys are not actual singers, but they sang horrendously. I felt bad for the French national anthem because it got butchered. They go to commercial break, and you'd think that a match would be starting, but no, they're still singing. Hurricane comes out and says they better not disrespect the USA and NYC. Hurricane says he has a partner who is used to beating up maggots, and then Sergeant Slaughter's music hits, and he comes down to the ring with the Hurricane. So they start going at it. Hurricane hits a high crossbody on Sylvain Grenier. Slaughter hits some slams on Dupree. Slaughter eventually gets the Cobra Clutch, but Sylvain Grenier breaks it up, and then Sergeant Slaughter gets the Cobra Clutch on Sylvain for his trouble. Sylvain ends up getting to the ropes for a rope break, and then as the ref is breaking him up and, has his back turned to check on Sylvain, Rene Dupree gets a belt shot for the win. This is another dud match. It lasted like 2.5, 3 minutes. Nothing eventful happened in the slightest. Then we had a backstage segment, more Kane looking into the mirror. Another memory of Kane, same ripple effect, and it was back to 3 weeks ago when Austin was yelling at Kane right into his face. Around this time, I felt like we should have been getting closer to the main event. I felt like this Raw had been like 2.5 hours already, but we were only like 40 minutes into this Raw. Then we had an Austin promo. Austin comes out to a pretty massive pop. Austin announces that Mania will return to MSG. The logo is lowered. The Mania 20 logo is lowered down to the stage, and pyro goes off. Austin mentions Foley and asks him to come to the ring. Austin says there's something Foley wants to have, and he calls out all the ECW alumni such as RVD, the Dudleys, Dreamer, Al Snow. They all come down to RVD's theme, and Rob Van Dam is holding the Intercontinental title in like a protective case plaque kind of thing. There were a lot of EC Dub chants, not ECW, EC Dub. Austin shows a highlight package of Foley's career. One thing I noticed about this highlight package was there was just some generic feel-good guitar riff going on. I guarantee you that when this show aired in 2003, they had like an actual song. But now that they're replaying this on the network, they probably no longer have the rights to that song, so they just kind of have to add some sort of generic song to avoid copyright strikes. Austin says Foley is the toughest SOB he's ever met. Foley says he forgot how good he really was. And then Mr. McMahon's music hits. We had a great line here. JR says Vince McMahon was, JR is obviously like, the audacity of this man. And JR says Vince was strutting out here like he owned the place, to which King replied, he does own the place, which I thought was really funny. McMahon says he personally wants to beat Foley into a gelatinous ooze. I think that was his line. It was something like that. McMahon always had great lines. McMahon says he wants to say to Foley what everyone else is thinking, and it was 2 words, and they were thank you. Foley shakes his hand and then asks for a hug. He eventually just reaches in and grabs McMahon and gives him a big old bear hug. McMahon is disgusted. Foley says it's so great to be here in MSG in New York City with so many great performers and Al Snow. Fantastic line. Foley says he loved being back and he loves the fans. And then McFoley attempted to quote a famous poet or philosopher, but then he ended up quoting Frosty the Snowman, saying he will say goodbye, but don't you cry, because I'll be back again someday. So that was the end of that segment. It was a really good, feel-good segment, kind of like Foley's send-off, even though Mick Foley's had like 20 send-offs in his career. And this one was nice. I liked it a lot. Then we had our 4th tag team match of the night. Teddy Long booked this show. Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash versus Ric Flair and Randy Orton. Evolution still has that generic-ass theme that sounds exactly like Line in the Sand. So I don't know. Maybe some of you can fill me in on this. Did they have that theme in the beginning, and were they modeling it after Motorhead's song, and then they just decided, fuck it, let's just get Motorhead to do this group's theme? I don't know, but that's what I was thinking. Lillian began, this was really funny, Lillian began to introduce Ric Flair and Randy Orton, and then she said, and then she stopped because she realized that Ric Flair and Randy Orton were from 2 different parts of the country, so it would have been a really awkward ring introduction, so she just waited like 10 seconds and then started another introduction. HBK and Nash dominate for the early going. We go back to commercial break and come back to Orton and Flair getting the heat. There was this awkward blind tag spot where the ref thought Orton had tagged in Flair because Shawn Michaels did like a roll-up on Flair, and the ref didn't count because he thought Orton had gotten the tag, and maybe he did, and Orton didn't realize it. So Orton's just hanging out on the apron, and then Flair's in this roll-up for like 3 seconds, and the ref just kind of sitting there, and then eventually he does count, and then Orton breaks it up with like a clothesline or something. So HBK gets the hot tag to Nash. Nash beats up both of them, goes for a jackknife. Flair hits an undetected low blow. Nash gets a tag to HBK, who makes another epic comeback. HBK hits a huge ass super kick on Ric Flair for the win. This was actually a pretty decent match. It wasn't horrible. It was the best of the 4 tag team matches we had. It started out pretty, by the books, but it got really fun at the end. So I'll give it 2.5. It was pretty good. A clip is shown of last week's main event with Kane to hype up the title match. The results of the poll say that 56% of people think that Kane will win the title. Kane is once again shown backstage, warming up, pacing around his quote-unquote locker room, which is basically just a boiler room. And no memories this time. I think we're done with our Kane memories for the show. Then we had a backstage segment, like a during the break kind of segment. And Foley was signing a book for Vince McMahon. Orton and Flair walked by, and he said, "Nice match, Flair." And Flair flips his shit, and the 2 start fighting. And then Orton comes in to Flair's aid and beats the shit out of Foley. Foley fights back for a little bit, but then gets a bottle busted on his face, and Flair beats him up some more, and so does Orton. Orton and Foley start fighting all throughout Madison Square Garden, and this is the famous kick down the stairwell. He bashes Foley's head against the wall. Foley's kind of sitting down against the stairs. Randy Orton gives him one big kick, and Foley tumbles all the way down the stairs and takes a pretty hard fall, actually. You really can't, you can't really gracefully fall downstairs. There's really no good way to fall down a flight of stairs, but he did it, and these weren't like carpeted steps. These were legit steps. So it doesn't look brutal compared to like other bumps Mick Foley's taken, like a fall off a cell, a fall through a cage, and stuff like that. But this looked like it would have hurt. And then as Foley's laying there, Vinny says he needs a janitor to clean up all the shit in the ring. And then JR was like, "Oh, that arrogant young son of a bitch." JR was pitched. JR was pissed, which I will add. I feel like that's something missing. Like, I will always make fun of the fact that JR gets mad all the time. And I'm not making fun of it. I don't want to say I'm making fun of him. I just love how JR always got pissed. But that was the good thing about JR is, like, JR actually gave a fuck. You know what I mean? Like, he cared about what was happening in the ring. As opposed to, Michael Cole, JBL, and Byron Saxton, where, like, Cole and Saxton are kind of just, like, reporters telling people what happened. And, I mean, there is that aspect to an announcer's, like, job, but I feel like announcers shouldn't be like the news, like an anchor man. They should be like your buddies, or like your big brother that knows more about the show than you do, that's like helping you through the show. You know what I mean? They should be a companion, not like a business partner, if that makes sense. So anyway, that's my little mini rant on announcing. Then we had a 5-minute white boy challenge. Teddy Long says he was going to leave MSG a happy man because it's the 5-minute white boy challenge. He asked any white boy to come out and challenge Rodney Mack. Goldberg's music hits. For the first time in MSG, Goldberg is live. This was a great moment. Teddy Long tells Rodney Mack to leave the ring and kill Goldberg. King says, "Look at Theodore Mack," which was a very funny line. So Goldberg is standing in his pyro. This isn't, like the sparks are coming in. This looked so hilarious. Mack goes through the pyro to beat up Goldberg, and then Goldberg spears him through the pyro, which was amazing. And then the funniest moment of this entire Raw, Rodney Mack proceeded to, like, roll down the entire entranceway to, like, get away from Goldberg. Like, I don't know if he, like, just never decided to get up. I would think if I were in Rodney Mack's shoes and I needed to get back to the ring, I'd get speared, and maybe, like, I'd, like, get up and, like, slowly stagger to the ring, like, holding my ribs, like, selling the spear. But I wouldn't roll the entire way, because that just looked ridiculous. Goldberg struggles to get him to the ring. Eventually he does, the bell rings, and in 26 seconds Goldberg hits a jackhammer for the win, and Rodney Mack loses his first match in WWE. Then we had a backstage segment, Kane and Rob Van Dam. RVD walks into Kane's locker room and tells him to kick ass tonight. Kane says nothing and looks into the mirror. Gets mad, smashes it, which is bad luck, which was an omen for the night. So I will say, I doubt they looked that much into this. Like, I doubt they felt like, we'll have Kane break the mirror here, which will signify to the audience that bad luck is approaching. I doubt they thought of that. I thought they probably just wanted Kane to do something cool, like smash a mirror with his fist. Anyway, we had our main event, finally, Triple H versus Kane. Kane comes in and just starts beating the shit out of Triple H. Kane didn't, the pyro went off for Kane's entrance, but he didn't, do anything special. He was walking to the ring. He was a man with a purpose. Kane and Triple H did some slow, boring crowd brawling. Flair goes into the ring and starts bouncing around to distract the ref, and then Triple H hits Kane in the face with a steel chair, and Raw goes to a commercial. Triple H continues to get the heat on Kane. He hits an double-A spine buster, and Kane sits up. He hits some more moves, and Kane sits up, and Kane just keeps sitting up. That's the whole thing. Triple H keeps punching him, and Kane gets a comeback going. Kane hits a diving clothesline, and the two stumble into Hebner. Kane then goes for a big boot, which destroys Earl Hebner, so Earl Hebner's down. Majority of this match revolved around the ref either not paying attention or just ref bumps in general. Flair tries a belt shot and misses. Kane gets a belt shot on Triple H, and he disposes of Ric Flair. Another ref comes in, and the crowd thinks this is it. Triple H kicks out at 2 9/10. The crowd gives out one giant sigh of just disappointment. Kane destroys the new ref that comes out. Triple H gets a low blow and a pedigree, and people think this is it because, no one kicks out of the pedigree. Kane kicks out, and the crowd just goes crazy. They're so into Kane. There's loud "Let's go Kane" chants. Kane slingshots Triple H into Flair with a hard-ass collision. I don't know, maybe they were just really good at selling it and taking this bump, but they look like they just slammed into each other. Kane calls for a choke slam, and he's got Triple H, in his grasp, and then Orton comes into the crowd, hits a low blow and an RKO. Triple H hits a pedigree for the pinfall. This was a very good match. This was probably the best. This is obviously the best part of Raw. I mean, I guess I'll give this Raw credit because it built to the main event and the main event delivered. Everything else on the show was kind of just bland and not really exciting, but it did do its job well. So this match was good. I'll give it 3 stars. I'll give it a soft 3 stars. You know, it wasn't the greatest match in the world. It wasn't the most technical match in the world, but it was fun. It was entertaining. The crowd was really into it, and I was into it even though I knew the result. So I'll give it 3 stars. It was a very good match. Bischoff comes out and tells Kane to unmask. Kane goes to take off his mask, but Evolution beats him up because they want to rip it off themselves. RVD comes out to save Kane. The two clear the ring, and Kane is about to summon fire from the posts, stops, and then attempts to unmask. Kane slowly goes to each corner of the ring, attempting to unmask himself, and then eventually he does. He reveals his face, he chokeslams RVD, and then his pyro goes off, and it was the loudest pyro I've ever heard in my entire life. Now that that's over, I want to talk about Kane. Now, Kane unmasking is something that's, I shouldn't even say it's debated. It's almost universally agreed that Kane should have never unmasked. I don't know if I 100% agree with that, because as we'll see, Kane being unmasked in 2003 was probably the best work of Kane's career, if I really think about it. And I was thinking about Kane's career in its entirety after I watched this Raw. And I have to say, like, I honestly feel bad for Kane because, like, it seemed like he had so many good assets to him, but things just never fell into place for him. For one, you know, Kane is a good wrestler, and he's really good for someone who's like 7'1", 320 pounds. The problem was Kane was always kind of in the shadow of The Undertaker, both, you know, literally and metaphorically. You know, in the storyline, he's the younger brother of The Undertaker, so it makes sense. He's like the Luigi to the Mario, if that makes sense. But Undertaker is just a better wrestler than Kane. So I feel like Kane always kind of got the short end of the stick, because you can't have, especially in, you know, the time where Kane and Undertaker rose to popularity in like the mid to late 90s. You know, big men were still a thing, but, you know, not everyone in the main event scene was going to be 7 feet tall, 300 pounds. You needed to have a mix. And Taker filled that big man role, like, to a T. He was the go-to main event big guy. And Kane, unfortunately, he was kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. I feel like if Undertaker hadn't been there, Kane would have been probably the best big man wrestler that the WWE had. I mean, maybe like Nash. I feel like Nash is, you know, decent. I mean, like Nash and Kane are probably even. I'd say maybe Kane's a little better. Big Show's good too, but I feel like, I'm not, again, like Kane is very athletic for someone his size. That's what I'm getting at. So, but when I look at this storyline, and this is what I remember, you know, I was around like maybe 7 years old, 6 or 7 years old in 2003. Kane legitimately scared the shit out of me. And Kane, like I remember watching Kane's unmasking live. Because, you know, it was summer vacation, I could stay up as long as I wanted, and I was able to watch Raw till 11 o'clock. And I watched this unmasking, and I was like, holy shit, that's what he looks like. Now, granted, in hindsight, I can say that Kane's reveal was kind of ridiculous. Because the one thing I think I would have changed right off the bat was I would have had Kane shave his head. Because, like, the gimmick was, everyone thought the long hair was part of the mask, but the long hair had the mask and the hair were connected. So if Kane were bald, I think that would have been a great look. And granted, Kane did shave his head for the weeks to come, so he didn't have that weird, like, you know, patch of hair on his head. But I really think if a freshly shaved Kane would have been a more intimidating look, just because it would have been such a counter to what we were used to seeing from Kane. But I really feel like Kane got the short end of the stick with this heel run, because he was doing some amazing work and he looked fucking unstoppable. And when I review later Raws down the road, you'll see like the terror Kane goes on. I really think Kane should have gotten the world title. Maybe not on this Raw. I feel like maybe if you had moved this earlier, like here's what I don't want to rebook Kane, but I'm going to rebook Kane really quick. What I would have done, honestly, in hindsight, and this is me just like literally thinking on a whim, not even planning this out. I would have done this angle in maybe like mid-early May. Have Kane unmask, and then have Kane become the #1 contender for Triple H's world title at Bad Blood. You can have a heel versus heel match, but I think what if you made Kane like a great heel that people actually get behind him a bit? Kane can destroy Triple H at Bad Blood, get the world title, hold it all throughout the summer, and then maybe at SummerSlam you could have an Elimination Chamber match where it's Triple H versus Chris Jericho versus Shawn Michaels versus Randy Orton versus Kane versus Goldberg. And then you could have Jericho and Michaels start, and then Orton comes in, and then Triple H comes in, and then Kane comes in and eliminates everyone in the span of his chamber opening and Goldberg's chamber opening. And then you have a one-on-one match at the end of the chamber between Goldberg and Kane. It might not be the greatest match in the world, but it would be so awesome. And then you can have Goldberg win the world title at SummerSlam 2003 by beating the big bad monster Kane. That would have made WWE in 2003 so much better, as opposed to Triple H just constantly holding on to the world title. Again, I'm not saying, and I feel like it would have given Kane a really good world title run because he deserved it. You know what I mean? Kane is such a company guy. He got one run with the WWE title and it lasted a day. And then he had his one World Heavyweight Championship run in 2010. That was just awful because of the awful storylines he had to go in. That stupid Undertaker storyline and that horrendous storyline he had with Edge. Those matches he had with Edge in 2010 were terrible. I hated those matches. I really think if Kane got the world title here, it would have been like the perfect moment for his career. Like he could have looked back on his career. And I'm not saying Kane's had a bad career. The contrary. Kane's had a great career. And he's had a lot of longevity. You know, he's still around. I mean, granted, people aren't like dying to see Kane. They're not buying tickets to see Kane. But I really think if they had done something with Kane with the world title in 2003, it would have been huge. And I think Kane with the world title in 2003, and I feel like the more I watch these Raws, the more I wish they went that route, where Kane won the title at Bad Blood, and then maybe he unmasked at Bad Blood. Like, maybe that could have been a good thing. Like, maybe the stipulation was he lost, and then he, like, you know, that was the stipulation. Like, if he loses, he has to unmask. So that gives more buys for Bad Blood 2003. And then maybe he wins and then just unmasks for the shit of it because he just feels like it. You know what I mean? He just wants to. And he unmasks and he just goes on this rampage. And I want to talk about one more thing when it comes to Kane unmasking. And I might get into more of it when I get into future Raw reviews. But I do really, and I know a lot of people don't like this, and how by removing his mask, you remove the characteristic that defined Kane was that he was eternally burned in this fire that killed his parents, that the Undertaker caused. I really, really like the fact that they went with the route. I mean, sure, it might look like a cop-out, and it's the easy way out, and it's the easy explanation for why Kane doesn't have eternal burn marks on his face. But I really like the idea of they're not actual scars. Like, Kane he's so emotionally scarred that he thinks he has these burn marks on his face. You know what I mean? I really like that dynamic. I think it adds kind of an insanity to Kane that really makes him dangerous. So I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I mean, when I was younger, I really couldn't comprehend something like that because I really didn't understand the ideas of like post-traumatic stress disorder and stuff like that. But I really think, you know, in hindsight, they really should have run with that because that made Kane look a lot more intimidating. So, mini Kane rant aside, this was a decent Raw. It built towards the main event, and the main event was a good match, and it delivered, and Kane's unmasking was, you know, it was met with controversy. Some people, a lot of people don't like it, and a lot of people think it should have never happened. But for what we got, I thought it was pretty good. So, overall, I'll give this Raw, you know, I'll give it a thumbs up because it did its job. You know, it was kind of boring at parts, but what can you do? A good main event will give you a good rating. So, I'm Jericholic8704, and I will see all of you later.